Now let's look at the different kind of sensors that you're likely, and sometimes unlikely, to find on a mobile device. I've divided the sensors we're going to look at into 5 broad categories. Now, these are not official categories or anything like that. They're just convenient groupings that I came up with. At the top, you see microphone, touchscreen, and camera under obvious. Now, I'm calling these obvious because all smartphones have them, everyone knows what they are, and hardly anyone thinks of them as sensors. But they really are, and they're quite sophisticated sensors. To the left, you see 2 sensors that I'm putting into a visible category because you can actually see them on your phone, the proximity and ambient light sensors. They're typically at the top of your phone, and sometimes they're built into the same component. The spatial sensors over on the right are the ones that help you determine your location in physical space: accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetic field detector. And we can't really talk about those without talking about the GPS. The environmental sensors on the bottom left measure things like temperature, humidity, and air pressure. And finally, over there on the bottom right, we talk about a few specialized sensors that you may find on some smartphones. Let's talk first about some of the most obvious sensors on smartphones. This first one is probably the most obvious, since if your phone doesn't have a microphone, it can't really be called a phone. Of course, the microphone is used for making phone calls, but it has other uses as well. It's used for audio and video recordings. It's used for voice commands and dictation. And it's used in music recognition applications like Shazam. Perhaps one of the most interesting uses of the microphones in your smartphone is in noise cancellation. I intentionally use the plural microphones here because this requires more than one microphone to accomplish. Most mid to high level smartphones will have more than one microphone. The first microphone is located at the bottom of your headset, where it picks up your voice. But it'll also pick up ambient or background noise. Another microphone might be located on the top and the back of your phone. It's further away from your voice, so it's picking up mostly ambient noise. The software inverts the sound wave from the second microphone and uses it to cancel out the ambient noise from the main microphone. When Steve Jobs introduced the first iPhone in 2007, he talked a lot about the touchscreen. Specifically, he talked about how all revolutionary Apple products came with revolutionary user interfaces. The Mac had the mouse, the iPod had the click wheel, and the iPhone had a multi-touch touchscreen. He couldn't really claim that the touchscreen itself was revolutionary because boring devices like Palm Pilots and Blackberries already had those. And he couldn't really even claim that the iPhone's capacitive touchscreen was unique because LG had already released a phone with that technology earlier that year. So he focused on the fact that the iPhone had multi-touch gestures, like pinching and zooming for images. Today, nearly all smartphones have a capacitive touchscreen. Smartphone cameras have small sensors and small lenses. A larger sensor captures a wider range of light and dark. A larger lens lets in more light, and the combination of both allows you to separate your subject from their surroundings using background blur. Despite all this, smartphone cameras with their tiny sensor and lens combinations have changed photography. The smartphone has effectively become the point-and-shoot camera that everyone always has with them. And phone makers like Samsung, Apple, and now even Google are continuing to push the boundaries in the quality of pictures that can be taken with small sensors and lenses. not only by improving sensors and adding multiple cameras, but by digitally manipulating the image as it is being processed. And just consider the multitude of uses that users and app makers have found for smartphone cameras. Not just taking photos, but reading barcodes, identifying objects, holding video meetings, and storing business cards. It should be obvious that a camera sensor is among the most important sensor that you carry with you. Your phone's proximity sensor contains both an infrared emitter and an infrared detector. The emitter sends out an infrared beam of light, and the detector determines how much of that light comes back. If little or no light returns, that means that nothing is near the phone, specifically there's nothing near the sensor, to reflect the light back. If something does move in front of the proximity sensor, like your head when you hold the phone to your ear, it will interrupt the beam and reflect light back towards the sensor. The same principle could work with any kind of light, but infrared is used because there aren't a lot of other infrared sources around to interfere with it. Infrared proximity sensors are also used on touchless faucets and toilets and on Roomba vacuum cleaners. There are other kinds of sensors that measure distance or range, but they're not typically found on a mobile phone. A passive infrared sensor detects ambient infrared light, and they detect when the level changes. These sensors are found in motion detectors, like the light switches that turn on when you walk into a room. Police radar guns fire microwave radars at cars and measure the Doppler effect of the returning echo to determine how fast the car is moving. Ultrasonic sensors can be found on cars to help drivers park and detect other cars. They have a high-frequency speaker and a microphone that listens for the echo of nearby objects. Since they're ultrasonic, they're barely at the edge of what humans can hear, so they don't really bother us. The ambient light sensor in your phone is sometimes co-located in the same chip with your proximity sensor. Both sensors should be visible at the top of your phone. The ambient light sensor is used to detect how dark or how light it is in your location, so that the phone can adjust the screen's brightness accordingly. Both the proximity sensor and the ambient light sensor help save the phone's battery. The proximity sensor allows the phone screen to be turned off when the phone is near your ear, which also prevents you from making unwanted touches on the screen. And the ambient light sensor allows the phone screen to be turned down when the room you're in is dark. The screen uses a considerable amount of battery power, so anytime the screen is turned off or down, it helps prolong the battery life.